Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 8th of February, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar. Dollar continuing to rise the last few days, just showing its strength. That first target there on the short-term point and figure chart met, and we've got another upside target, another 0.6% away. So, whilst the long-term and medium-term charts still look bearish, the short-term we are seeing a recovery in the dollar. Euro sinking lower, a further 1.4% downside to 121. The Japanese yen, we're seeing the dollar just strengthening here as well on the short-term chart. And against sterling, sterling is up this morning, but it is falling away against the dollar as well, and we're bearish short-term. Support about to be reached there, so it'll be interesting if sterling goes lower. In fact, we're seeing sterling rising against the euro. So this morning we're just through the cloud here. Medium term, we are just finding some support on the cloud with the lagging line, and long term we are still bearish. If we look at the Swiss franc, sterling appreciating here as well, and against the Australian dollar also just moving back above the cloud. Bitcoin, as actually in all the turmoil that we've seen in the markets in the last few days, Bitcoin has been the more stable situation, and we are seeing just a recovery here on the cloud at the moment. We're through on the short-term cloud. That's just showing us some bullish upside. We're seeing upside targets of about 6%. We do seem to be holding this level, so it'd be very interesting to see whether we can recover and rebuild a trend. When you've had this sort of massive rise and catastrophic failure, it does make reading the chart quite difficult. Most investors, though, will be occupied with the US market. The S&P closed down 0.5% yesterday. The Nasdaq was down 1.3% almost. So we are just seeing a little bit of a reversal here. This is not going to be a straight line recovery, and we are still bearish below the cloud. We've got downside potential of about 1.5% on the short-term targets there. We don't really want to see new lows. That would start to activate downside targets. So we need to get some degree of confidence that we have seen a bottom here. Dow is also, it was off yesterday, only very slightly, but is still bearish in the short-term chart. The Russell 2000 was up very slightly, but is again still bearish in the short-term chart. We might be finding some support on the cloud here as well. The S&P future down 0.05%, so no real heads up on the market there as to which way it will open today. And the Nasdaq E-mini is actually up 0.25% and just starting to wander through on the short-term cloud. Very few of these charts we're seeing a short-term recovery, but we are seeing it here on the E-mini. So that might just give us a heads up as to what the market will do today. A fairly critical day, I would have thought. The FTSE 100 down nearly 0.2%, so still pretty bearish. And the FTSE 250 also looking fairly bearish. The UK market looking worse than the US market. And the DAX actually also looking pretty bad below the cloud on the medium-term chart. So European markets below the cloud on the medium-term charts. Most of the US markets holding the cloud position. Same is true of Asia. They're holding the cloud position here as well. We're seeing the Nikkei holding the daily cloud. The Hang Seng well and truly above, although bearish in the short term. Shanghai has come back below the cloud, so the Chinese market not looking as good. And the Sensex, we are holding the bullish position there. Australian market had a real sell-off, sharp sell-off, but has found support on the cloud with a lagging line. So at the moment, the jury's out as to whether this is a bearish situation. Brent crude down further this morning, now nudging $65. It just seems that 70 was a bridge too far, and we do have downside targets now to $60 on Brent. So having looked pretty bullish for the last several months, we are coming under some pressure now on Brent crude, so it'll be interesting to see whether any of these longer term targets build. WTI also nudging $61 now, looking bearish as well in the short term. US nat gas up very slightly, but in the scheme of things still bearish on all the charts here really. Downside targets are in the 250s now. Copper also falling very heavily. That stronger dollar having an impact on a lot of commodities, so we're seeing copper low lower. We're seeing, and in fact, copper has downside targets of some 7% now, so really falling away. The medium-term chart coming under pressure as well. Heating oil, very similar shape to the crude oil charts, heading lower. Coffee struggling in the short term, so still bearish on all three time frames. Cocoa is actually bullish on the short term, but bearish on the medium and long term. Cotton's bearish on the short term, but looking better medium and long term. Sugar is also looking bearish on the longer and medium term charts. Wheat, strangely, some of the softs looking quite good despite that stronger dollar. Wheat's looking better than it has for some time. Soybeans also climbing through the clouds as well, and corn actually looking better. So softs actually looking a little bit better than they have done. Gold, of course, is tends to fall on a stronger dollar, and we're really seeing that play out the last few days. Unusually gold falling at this time of year, so just pulling back. We did hit very strong resistance at this 1350, 1360 area. We have activated these long-term upside targets, but we do now have short-term downside targets here, some 1294, 1281, and we've got support. Remember, if we don't make it to those targets, that would be bullish confirmation. The key thing is to watch for a cross on the cloud. Silver also looking bearish with 1.4% downside. US 10-year yields falling back to 2.83%, but back into bullish territory on the short-term chart. Bond yields in the US almost look certain to rise above the 3% level now. Apple still bearish below the cloud, had a weak day yesterday, down another 2%. Google down almost 3%. Amazon just starting to struggle on that short-term cloud chart, and Facebook heading lower as well. And then Microsoft also bearish below the cloud, having found support on the medium-term chart, still bearish short-term. Keep an eye on these tech today. Apple's quite important now that it's quite bearish on that medium-term chart, so just keep an eye on that as well. New lows for Apple would be a bit of a signal for the market, I'd say. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.